"Get out, ma'am. This isn't your place anymore." Those weren't just words. They were a slap in the face. They hit harder than any punch, not just because of the tone, but because of who they were said to and where. In the heart of downtown Atlanta stood an elegant soul food restaurant known for its crispy fried catfish, cornbread muffins, and warm family atmosphere. A place that had once been built on love, loyalty, and tradition. But on this particular Tuesday afternoon, it became the scene of something shocking. The woman standing at the entrance wasn't just a customer. She wasn't lost or confused. She was Marilyn Jones, the mother of the restaurant's owner. But more than that, she was the reason the restaurant existed at all. Years ago, Marilyn had poured her heart, soul, and life savings into her daughter Tasha's dream. After retiring from her job as a nurse, she didn't spend her golden years vacationing or relaxing. No, she rolled up her sleeves and helped her daughter build something from the ground up. She handed over $85,000 from her retirement account to help secure the lease, buy equipment, and decorate the space with warmth that reminded customers of a true Southern home. She was there when they opened the doors for the first time. She scrubbed floors, stirred pots, and greeted customers with a smile. Back then, everyone knew Marilyn. She was the face you saw when you walked in, the one who made you feel like family. But things had changed. The restaurant had grown a lot. Tasha became a rising star in Atlanta's food scene. She was invited to food festivals, written about in local magazines, and even featured in a documentary about Black-owned businesses. She hired new managers, a polished PR team, and staff that looked like they belonged in a luxury hotel lobby rather than a neighborhood restaurant. Marilyn had slowly stepped back, thinking she was doing the right thing, letting her daughter lead, letting her fly. She hadn't visited in over a month, not because she didn't care, but because she didn't want to interfere. She wanted to give her daughter space, trust. But on that Tuesday, Marilyn decided to stop by. Nothing big, just a quiet visit. She wore her Sunday best dress, did her hair neatly, and walked in hoping to enjoy a warm meal and maybe see a few familiar faces. Instead, she was met with cold stares. As she walked past the front counter, staff didn't greet her. The music kept playing, and conversations carried on like she was invisible. She noticed the walls had been repainted, the menu had changed, and the friendly, cozy atmosphere had been replaced with a more modern vibe. But the biggest shock came when a young hostess, no older than 22, approached her with a clipboard and a sour look. "Can I help you?" the girl asked, annoyed. Marilyn smiled politely. "I'm just here to see how things are going. I used to help run this place." The hostess rolled her eyes. "You can't walk around here without checking in. Are you dining in or?" "I just wanted to," Marilyn began, but was cut off. "Ma'am," the girl said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "you're bothering the customers. If you don't have a reservation or purpose here, I'll have to ask you to leave." Then came the words that would send shockwaves through the entire building. "This isn't your place anymore." A hush fell over the room. People turned their heads. A few diners lowered their forks. A waiter froze mid-step. The disrespect was loud, clear, public, and yet Marilyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't cause a scene. She didn't even argue. Instead, she stood there in silence, holding back the tears, holding back the years of sacrifice, the years of love she had poured into that very restaurant, the late nights, the double shifts, the prayers, the pride. She nodded slowly, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Okay." Then she turned around, walked out the door, and sat quietly in her car. But here's what the hostess and the rest of the staff didn't know. Marilyn still owned 51% of that restaurant. And she wasn't just some old lady with memories. She was still a majority owner. She had the power to do much more than they ever imagined. And in the next 8 minutes, she was about to remind them all exactly whose place it still was. 3 years before that shocking Tuesday afternoon, Marilyn Jones and her daughter Tasha were sitting at a small kitchen table in their modest Atlanta home, scribbling notes on a yellow legal pad. The topic? A dream they shared. A dream to open a restaurant that would celebrate their heritage, their family recipes, and their Southern roots. Tasha had always loved cooking. She had a gift for flavor, for plating, and for making people smile with food. Marilyn had to experience the discipline and, most importantly, the savings. That savings, nearly $85,000, wasn't just money. It was a lifetime of sacrifice. Marilyn had worked as a nurse for 35 years. She'd raised her daughter alone. She skipped vacations. She drove the same car for 12 years. Every dollar she tucked away. She told herself it was for a quiet retirement, a peaceful life. But when her daughter looked her in the eyes and said, "Mom, I want to build something that's ours," Marilyn didn't hesitate. She cashed out her retirement fund, signed the lease papers with Tasha, and poured her energy into creating a space that would become more than just a restaurant. It was a place filled with soul and stories. They started small, 6 tables, 1 part-time chef, and Marilyn's famous collard greens recipe straight from her grandmother's kitchen in rural Georgia. Tasha would work the kitchen line, while Marilyn greeted customers, cleaned tables, and made sure everyone left with a full belly and a warm heart. It didn't take long for word to spread. In just a few months, local newspapers were writing features about this mother-daughter soul kitchen. Food bloggers raved about the candied yams and crispy catfish. Customers came in not just to eat, but to feel something: family history, belonging. And Tasha? She blossomed. She started doing interviews, getting invited to food expos, and even signed a book deal for Southern recipes with a modern twist. Her Instagram grew by the thousands. She wore chef whites like a queen wearing her crown. And Marilyn, proud and humble, stayed in the background, quietly cheering her on. But success is a tricky thing. As the restaurant's popularity exploded, so did the pressure to modernize. Tasha began hiring outside help, consultants, brand managers, and interior designers. She changed the logo, added new items to the menu, and soon Marilyn's role shifted from co-founder to supporter, from partner to something less. At first, it was small things. Tasha asked her mom to come in less often. Then, she stopped consulting her about menu changes. Eventually, she hired a new general manager who barely acknowledged Marilyn when she came by. Then one day it happened. Tasha sat her mom down and said, "Mom, I think it's time for you to really enjoy retirement. You've done more than enough. Let me take it from here." Marilyn felt the wind knocked out of her. She nodded, held back her tears, and gave her daughter a soft smile. "Of course, baby. I just want what's best for you." But deep inside, it hurt. It hurt more than she let on. She didn't mind stepping back. She believed in Tasha's talent. But what she couldn't understand was how she had gone from being the heartbeat of the business to being a ghost in it. Still, Marilyn stayed silent. She spent her days gardening, reading, and occasionally peeking at the restaurant's Instagram page just to feel close to it. Until that Tuesday. That one quiet Tuesday afternoon, when she finally decided to stop by, not to interfere, not to make a scene, just to see how things were going, to feel once again what she had helped create. She even wore her Sunday dress. She had a peaceful smile, excited to walk into a place that was, in so many ways, still hers. But what she walked into was something she couldn't recognize. Gone were the handwritten signs and warm decor. Gone were the familiar staff and the old playlist. Instead, she was met with blank faces, cold tones, and a look of confusion, as if she were a stranger. And then came the blow. "Mom, you don't need to be involved anymore. Just enjoy retirement." Words that had once felt like a suggestion now felt like a command. That Tuesday afternoon wasn't the first time Marilyn had felt pushed aside, but it was the first time she realized that her own daughter and her dream had moved on without her. What no one expected was what that pain would awaken, because Marilyn had stepped back for too long. She had given everything. Her money, her time, her recipes, her love. And now she was being treated like a guest in her own house. But what the staff didn't know, and what even Tasha seemed to forget, was one important detail. Marilyn still owned 51% of the restaurant. And that painful Tuesday afternoon was about to become the beginning of a powerful comeback. The moment Marilyn stepped outside that restaurant, her heart wasn't just broken. It was set on fire. She sat in her car, her hands trembling slightly, not from age, but from a flood of emotions running through her. Hurt, shock, disbelief, anger, but also clarity. Because while the hostess thought she was dismissing an old woman with no power, she had just poked the lioness. You see, what no one inside that restaurant realized was that Marilyn Jones still legally owned 51% of the business. That's right. More than her daughter, more than any investor, more than anyone working inside those walls. Even after stepping back and letting her daughter take the spotlight, Marilyn had never signed away her majority stake. She didn't need a title or a nameplate on the office door. She had the paperwork. And in business, that's what counts. So she reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and made one calm call to her lawyer, Mr. Brentley Carter, a sharp, no-nonsense man who had helped her and Tasha incorporate the business 3 years earlier. Brentley, she said firmly, it's time. He knew exactly what she meant. Within minutes, Marilyn had a digital copy of her ownership documents, a drafted letter of immediate takeover authority, and a plan. She took a deep breath, straightened her dress, fixed her posture like the queen she was, and walked back through the doors. But this time, she wasn't just a mother. She was a boss. The staff barely looked up as she re-entered, assuming the old lady had forgotten her keys or returned to argue. The young hostess from earlier leaned over to another server and whispered something with a smirk. The general manager rolled his eyes. They had no idea what was coming. Marilyn raised her voice just enough to carry across the room, but with the calm, commanding tone of a woman who'd raised a daughter on her own, survived decades of hardship, and built a dream from scratch. Can I have all staff gather near the front counter? Immediately. Confused glances were exchanged. The manager frowned but waved everyone over. A few cooks even peeked out from the kitchen. Marilyn reached into her bag and pulled out a thick manila folder. She didn't shout. She didn't rant. She simply said, loud and clear, "This is a legal notice. Effective immediately, I am assuming full operational control of this restaurant as the majority owner of the business." Silence. You could hear the ice melting in someone's drink. All eyes were on her now, even the ones that had ignored her earlier. The manager stepped forward, trying to regain control. Ma'am, I don't think you can just—" "You're fired," Marilyn said, locking eyes with him. He blinked. "Wait, what?" "I said, you're fired. Pack your things. You no longer work here." Before he could respond, she turned to the hostess. "You, the one who told me to leave my own restaurant. Fired. Effective now." The girl gasped. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." One by one, Marilyn addressed each member of the staff who had contributed to the cold, toxic culture she had just witnessed. The people who forgot the heart of the business, the soul of it. Each termination was deliberate, calm, professional, but devastating. She didn't do it out of revenge. She did it out of principle. Because her name, her money, and her legacy, they had all been wrapped into this business. And she refused to let disrespect, arrogance, or ambition erase the values she had built it on. While the remaining few stunned employees stood frozen, unsure what to say or do, Marilyn walked into the back office and sat down at her daughter's desk. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply called her daughter's cell phone. "Hey, it's Mom. You need to come down to the restaurant. Now." And she hung up. In just 8 minutes, Marilyn had flipped the script. She had walked out humiliated and returned in power, not with rage, but with righteousness, not with chaos, but with clarity. She wasn't there to destroy her daughter's dream. She was there to protect it, because the people Tasha had trusted were corrupting the culture, erasing the soul, and worst of all, forgetting the very foundation the restaurant stood on. And while some people think strength is loud, Marilyn proved that real power walks in quiet with the paperwork. Because when you own 51% of the business, you don't need permission to take your seat back at the table. About an hour after Marilyn had reclaimed control of the restaurant, the front door swung open with force. Tasha burst in, her heels clicking hard against the polished floor. Phone still in hand, chest rising and falling with shallow, panicked breaths. Her face was flushed, her hair slightly tousled, and her voice trembled, not with fear, but with confusion and disbelief. "Mom, what are you doing?" She looked around the room, taking in the stunned expressions of the remaining staff. The absence of familiar faces, the manager, the hostess, the others, hit her like a wave. "You can't just fire everyone," she shouted, her voice echoing through the restaurant that had suddenly fallen quiet. Marilyn sat calmly at the table near the front window, her favorite spot, sipping a glass of sweet tea that one of the kitchen assistants had nervously brought her. Her posture was relaxed, her expression unreadable. She set the glass down gently and looked up at her daughter with calm, steady eyes. "I can," she said softly, "and I did." Tasha blinked. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Marilyn stood slowly, walked over, and gently placed her hand on her daughter's arm. "You forgot something, baby girl. I still own this place. And today, I remembered what I built." Tasha's eyes filled with tears. "But I thought you wanted out. You said you wanted a rest. You said you were tired." Marilyn nodded slowly. "I was tired, but not of this, not of us." She looked around the restaurant as if taking in every brick, every chair, every inch of the place she helped bring to life. "I stepped back so you could grow, so you could find your own way. But I never stopped caring, Tasha. Never. I was watching, hoping you'd carry the heart of this place with you." Tasha lowered her gaze, her hands shaking now, not with anger, but with guilt. "I didn't mean to lose it, Mom. I got caught up in everything. The media, the attention, the pressure. Everyone said we had to level up, that we had to go modern, corporate, bigger." "I know," Marilyn said gently. "Success can be loud. It makes you think you need to keep changing to stay on top. But sometimes, in all that noise, we forget where we started." Tasha wiped a tear from her cheek. "I hired people who look good on paper," she admitted. "People with restaurant experience, fancy resumes. But they didn't care. They didn't understand what this place means to us. They didn't treat you with respect. They didn't treat our customers like family. And I let it happen." Marilyn took her hand. "This place wasn't built on modern trends. It was built on soul, on tradition, on respect. You can evolve, yes, but you can't lose a heart. And sweetheart, it's been gone for a while." Tasha nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I didn't know how far I had drifted. I was so focused on making it mine that I forgot it was ours." They stood there for a moment, mother and daughter, side by side. One built from wisdom and sacrifice, the other from fire and ambition. Two strong women who had dreamed together, now reuniting after a painful silence. "I'm sorry, Mom," Tasha whispered. "I should have never pushed you out. I thought I was doing the right thing, giving you peace, but I see now I was just afraid of you seeing me mess up." Marilyn smiled for the first time that day. A soft, genuine smile. "Mistakes don't make you weak. They make you human. What matters is what you do after." Tasha looked around the restaurant. At the kitchen door, still swinging gently, the empty chairs, the silence where laughter and conversation once lived. "Can we fix it?" she asked. Marilyn nodded. "We already started." And just like that, a shift happened. Not in the building, but in the energy between them. The weight of pride, pain, and power melted into something stronger. Understanding. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about family. About remembering the roots of a dream that started in a tiny kitchen with two women who believed in each other. As the sun dipped lower in the Atlanta sky, its golden light poured through the restaurant windows, casting long shadows across the floor. But for the first time in a long time, there was no tension in the air, only the quiet sense that something beautiful was beginning again. Not just a business revival, but a healing. 2 weeks later, the restaurant reopened. Same name, same address, same familiar scent of fried catfish in the air. But something had shifted, something deep, gone with a staff with fancy resumes and cold eyes. In their place stood a new team, handpicked by Marilyn herself. These were people who didn't just know how to work in a restaurant. They knew how to work with heart. Some were neighbors. Some were former customers. One was even a single mother who had once been served a free meal here during tough times. Marilyn remembered. This wasn't just a team. It was a family. The walls were still painted the same color, but now they were decorated with old photos of Marilyn and Tasha from when they opened the place, from family holidays, from the early days when Marilyn still rolled biscuit dough by hand. A new mural had been painted along the back wall, a large tree with deep roots and names carved into the trunk. Employees, friends, family, symbolizing the foundation of something bigger than business. Tasha remained co-owner, but she walked in each day with a different posture, not towering, not rushing, but grounded, humbled. She now wore an apron more often than a blazer and made it a point to sit with customers when she had time, asking about their families, their memories of the place. She spoke publicly on social media and in interviews. In one video, her voice cracked as she said, "Sometimes success makes you look so far ahead, you forget to glance back and say thank you to the people who push you forward." And Marilyn? She had changed too, but in the best way. Every afternoon, just before the dinner crowd rolled in, she would take her seat at the front window, the one that looked out onto the sidewalk. She had her tea in hand and a soft smile on her face, the kind of smile that told you she was watching everything. Not with judgment, but with love. She wasn't checking schedules or balancing spreadsheets. She wasn't hovering over cooks or demanding reports. She was simply there, like a lighthouse, a presence, a reminder. To customers, she was more than the owner. She was a living piece of the story. They often stopped to chat with her on their way out, sometimes even bringing flowers, old photos, or handwritten thank you notes. One man walked in holding a laminated newspaper clipping from 3 years earlier, when the restaurant had first opened. He'd kept it in his wallet all that time. Another elderly woman, a retired teacher, cried at the counter and said, "This place feels like home again." The story of what happened. The day Marilyn was told to leave, the way she returned with grace and took back control, had gone viral online. A local blogger wrote a piece titled, 51% Power and 100% Heart. And within days, it had spread across the internet. News stations picked it up. Podcasters interviewed Marilyn and Tasha together. It even inspired a documentary filmmaker to reach out about turning it into a short film. But what drew people back wasn't just the attention or the press. It was a feeling. The feeling that when you walked through those doors, you weren't just entering a place to eat. You were entering a space built on resilience, respect, and redemption. People came for the food, yes. The crispy catfish, the slow-cooked greens, the sweet peach cobbler that Marilyn had been perfecting since the 70s. But they stayed for something deeper. The energy, the story, the soul. The restaurant became a symbol, not just of good Southern cooking, but of second chances. Tasha and Marilyn, mother and daughter, co-owners, partners, they had rediscovered each other through the fire. What had once divided them had now become the glue that held them together. And Marilyn, in all her quiet strength, had proven something powerful. That dignity doesn't have to shout. That ownership isn't just about paper. It's about purpose. And that even when you're pushed out, dismissed, or disrespected, if you stay true to your values, you can always come home again. Every now and then, someone walking past the window would spot Marilyn and wave. And she'd wave back, maybe even motion for them to come in. Because at that little soul food spot in downtown Atlanta, everyone was family. And Marilyn, she wasn't just a boss. She was the heart. So next time you think someone's just an old woman walking into a restaurant, think twice. She might be the queen of the castle, and you could be just minutes away from being shown the door.